Welcome. I'm Dave King, Chairman of Triple Crown Sports and CEO of College Sports Eval. Today's information that I'm bringing to you was done at the request of 12 or 14 coaches that I've been meeting with on a regular basis to try to make a determination on really some of the peer impacts that they were having. We'd been comparing notes in 3 meetings, and I'd made a decision to run a club test on where research or SurveyMonkey on where our club coaches were at. And when we got that presentation ready to get back to our club coaches, I realized that many of you as college coaches were in a similar spot, meaning peer information was harder to come by than you'd hoped and was extremely valuable. Also, our club coaches had a number of issues that they reached out to us on, and one of those core issues was, where are you at as college coaches, and what's your world look like, and what is your decision cycle, and what would be the impacts to each of them. So I'm going to give you back the data as we got it and kind of show you that what we were able to put together here. 96 Division I coaches responded, 21 of you in the Power 5 section. And then we got a nice distribution all the way down through JUCO, which what I would consider to be valid research, meaning enough people representing each group. Now, I did not break out by group the results, so collectively, I would tell you the nuances were not as much as you'd think as I looked at them separately. But as a collective whole, some of the things that this disease had meant to you or done to you. So the issues to you as college coaches, I think in common, 53% of you didn't have a name, meaning you didn't know of a person with a physical name, John Smith, your buddy, your neighbor, your grandma, or anyone. So we still had some isolation from the disease. 40% of you were feeling serious anxiety and stress. 25% of you did physically know someone with the disease, and 6% of you had been involved with the hard part of the disease, hospitalization, ICU, or loss of life. I think from jobs and wages, we came back and said, what's it doing financially? And so the same thing we did with the clubs, we said, what's the disease doing to you? The club coaches, what is it doing to your finances? We found here that the majority of you had parents of players that had been affected, and still some uncertainty that a number of you had actually gone through cuts already in staff size or wage compensation. 7.5 or 1 out of 12 of you felt like your job was in jeopardy, and 34% still were very uncertain. Some of your staff said jobs would be eliminated, 8% with some uncertainty, and then the jeopardy part of this thing basically said that 17% of you believed that your staff jobs were in jeopardy, and 48% believed it was still very uncertain. So what this kind of told me is there was a lot of uncertainty. What it had done in scholarships was not as big as I thought, meaning 85% of you had not been really affected in scholarships yet. Some 10% reduction, some 20%, some other combinations, but this was probably one of the more stable parts of your budgeting process, was scholarship commitment. The next one was your team budget, the best of your knowledge will be. And so this one really came out an assortment, meaning a large group of you believed that your budgets were in jeopardy of being whole in any shape or form. And so I came up with this conclusion that 25% of you were going to be living with the same budget. 75% of you would have a reduction between 10 and 40%. And I wanted to place it this way. Remember, if you don't have a cut in the budget, that may be good, but the teams that you will play will be affected, and their abilities to come play, etc., may be changed. So there's going to be impacts that, if it's not on your team, it'll be in a ball game you play from that standpoint. What other things were affected by the disease, whether it be team travel, fall schedule, senior scholarships, big road trips, and the majority of 80% of you were going to lose the summer camp business this year. Recruiting trips, 76% of you believe they would be adjusted. Team travel, 71% believed that your budget was going to be hit there. Big team road trips, that big Florida, the big Puerto Vallarta that we had, those things like that would be a dramatic effect. Professional development, conferences, things of that level for you. Senior scholarships, not as much as I thought, 20%. Freshman scholarships, 13%. So cost-wise, that summed up what we saw. Anxieties and concern level on the high basis. And so this was according to you as a head coach or what you reported back. The athletic department as a whole, you believe, was the highest level of stress. Meaning when you looked at them, they were feeling the implications of what football might do, what COVID, what shut down campus, what campus-wide, what online education, that the stressors were very high to them. Actually, the next group out was your current players. And so when I look at this, it said that there was still a lot of uncertainty with players on your roster. Your support staff was in a similar, those director of ops, those people in those positions around you. Recruits was a little lower than current players, and I think we saw that when we did the player research for club players. We saw that their biggest stressor was not the disease, it was in the 4-hole, and their biggest stressor was actually not being around their friends. And in the 2-hole was financial impacts on their family, and in the 3-hole was being around their family 24/7, and in the 4-hole was the COVID. So recruits had a little different posture, and you saw it differently too. Your other coaches at 26% and you at 22%. As a leader, it appears that you believe you're experiencing interactions with these groups that put you at a lower anxiety level. The other current statuses on campus was closed until further notice, and this was over 80%. Return in June, you can see, is a sliver. Return in July is a sliver. Some return in August, and then some uncertainty. And so return to campus. Will you return to recruiting? End of May was a choice, and June was a choice. And so you can see these percentages are very low. July was a choice. But uncertainty, still over 70% of you were faced with true uncertainty when you return to recruiting. How you would be allowed to recruit was a question, which means air travel. Right now, 12% of you, 11 plus, thought you could return to get in an airplane, but 68% of you said it's uncertain, and 22% you already had a no. So there were more no's. There were 2 no's for every 1 yes on getting in an airplane. To travel in a car seemed to be the predominant answer. That methodology would be how you could recruit. And so 46% of you could return that way. Camps on campus, we had a 14% answer. The rest was uncertain or no. Recruits on campus, 15% answer. So if you look at these 1 in 6, 1 in 7 type of answers, not very many of you are going to do much on your campus this summer according to your answers. What was your biggest concern right now? Loss of football, financials, budgets, personal finances, your mental health, the mental health of your staff, physical readiness of your team. And in the order that you rated them, number 1 was the disease and the direction of it, meaning where was certainty going to come in, where would you know more. The second one was the team budget. In other words, with that certainty, what would you do with your budgets? And in the 3rd hole was what would the athletic department do with their budgets. And I think those probably are hand in hand for most of you. The mental health of coaches and teams was in the 4 hole. The stress of these situations that you're in. Personal risks of the disease still popped up in the top 5. And then personal finances were after. And then we saw loss of football fall just below that. And personal mental health. And then physical readiness of the team. And finally, leadership, mentoring, helping you. And I would say that just from me to you, don't underestimate what it means to have a leader in your life to mentor you and walk you through some of this crisis, just like what you'll mean to other people in walking them through being a beacon to the crisis. Extended eligibility was a unique issue that came out of this one, and we rated it in the order of impacts on coaches again here, if you had to rate those impacts, and the number 1 was the sheer size of your roster to manage, meaning how was I going to go up 4, 6, 8 kids players, student athletes, and be able to manage that roster. The financial implications of that roster, whether it's uniforms, whether it's scholarships, whether it's training table, was there. Relief financially from the athletic department, just exactly how are we going to cover paying for these more bodies. And then the extra academic issues came up from all of a sudden you've got second-year freshmen, second-year sophomores, second-year juniors with all being on a 5-year clock now. What were you going to do with the academic issues that you were now faced with? Scholarship reductions was an issue from freshmen being reduced, sophomores being reduced, juniors, meaning making more room at the end financially in your budget. Potential verbal reductions to recruits was next out. And then fundraising to cover relief. Club coach education to assist on the impacts. In other words, the number of phone calls to you, where does my freshman stand? Where does my sophomore that's playing for you stand? Where does my incoming verbal stand? What are you going to do to recruit my players this year? What do you need? And then the last, conference rules on scholarships, whether they were protected multi-year. So the physical size of roster had dramatic impacts on you. I would say the way we're thinking at Triple Crown and CSE is what are the level of safety that we need to restart, meaning not what are we going to do, but how are we going to think. And is the disease really safe? Is it acceptably safe? Or is it not safe at all? And so when we get to the really safe category, we see some very unique things here. The vaccine is ready and accessible to all. And I think you all know that maybe it's a 4-month clock, but probably it's a 12 to 18-month clock to actually get us all a vaccine and vaccinated. Testing of all, contact tracing, and quarantine. This process of really safe, where we find people that have it and move them through, a hospital success completely achieved, and in-public guidance rules achieved. So the likelihood that we get this definition for our business, for Triple Crown Sports, is very slim. So we're operating under the space of what is acceptably safe. And to me that means that regionally the disease data shows acceptable curves. And so you as a national entity, that means the curve's got to be in all places. You can't have 2 states that are open and 2 states that are closed and play in a conference of 4 states. And so are the curves down and flattened to where it's acceptable for people involved? Hospital success achieved. Beds, ICUs, masks, ventilators, treatment. Working on a vaccine, which is where we're at right now. And testing for symptomatic immediately and antibody testing for the rest. If this is a definition of acceptably safe to get public guidance to let us play again, it is, to me, it's a more probable. At an academic institution, I'm a belief that you're somewhere between acceptably safe and safe definitions that your institutions will probably go to. Public guidance rules to match the disease safely. The disease is not under control. The health system cannot meet demand. There's continual spikes and hot spots. Disease has no known cure or vaccine. And we cannot test the public to put them together in gatherings of diverse groups. We're somewhere between this not under control and moving into acceptably safe in most of the states in the United States except the Northeast right now. Major decisions from authorities. Watch for these. This is what we do in every state we operate in, and we're in 41 states operating our business. And is it open for limited business? And state by state, likely now to June 6th. However, facility or academic or anyone that owns a sports venue is going to be in that definition. I would say a 4-week lag or a 2-week lag from states open. Now what is the policy on facilities? Most likely the policy will be revised in guidance multiple times. Public gathering size seems to be one of the big limitations. I'm going to address it a little at the end on a program we're working on. 10 to 50 people is a big move for outdoor sports. If we can get to 50 and then on up, there's no question all of our tournaments can be run. But actually under the premise that we can get social distancing success in a 10-person definition, and I'll show you how. Exact guidance issued for distancing, sanitation, PPE should come from this. And then we need to have at-risk populations with pre-existing conditions manage themselves and stay basically warned out of our venues. What have we done at Triple Crown and CSC? We've canceled all of our events through May 15th. We've continued to work with sites. We work with some 300 different venues. And right now we work with some 20,000 different clubs. And trying to walk them through this process of what a schedule looks like, what a summer looks like, what the impacts look like. And so that they can build multiple scenarios. We, like everybody else, are financially damaged. We've cut costs, we've cut wages, we're continually examining financial abilities. I mean, most of the time in businesses like ours and other people that are in this space, it's the exit plan that's critical. And so we don't know the width of the narrows we're going to go through. We have to have multiple financial scenarios. We've kept a readiness level to produce events with strict COVID-19 protocols and guidance. We've continued to lead the national platform on safe return, safe in June, safe after. And Kerry King, my son, is CEO of Triple Crown. He's co-chair. They've also then built out the United Against COVID group to push legislation in Washington, D.C. It's on the floor, it's sponsored. Right now it's to get the youth sports industry recognized for disaster funds. And Kerry's also serving on the chair there. So I think you can see that we're working on protocols, safe return for youth, and also some implications. If you're dealing with anyone in your space financially, you need to understand the academy, the club, the team, the event organizer are in some of the worst space they've ever been in their life. This is a unique event for them because they're operating like a restaurant and a bar with zero business, and in all probability went down before the restaurant and bar were stopped and will come out after in public guidance. So the width of the disease impact financially is substantial. We built a social distancing master plan for any ballpark USA for anyone's use. And so after the meeting, we'll post up a version of this tomorrow on final edit so that a lot of people can use it. Where are we at today in our scenarios? Scenario B, we think May is completely iffy for our business. We think early June is a 65-35, but it's really about public policy. Our scenarios, and if you notice there's no A, our scenario A is already gone. And that'll give you an example of scenario planning. Scenario C, which is we think is likely at 75-25, which says if we can get public policy framed, we believe our national events will be down 25 to 30%, and our local events 10 to 20. Scenario D, we think fall is 80-20. So if it lingers to fall, and we just start back in against fall with youth sports or with college sports, we still have the chance that the disease lingers enough to affect public policy. January 2021 is 90-10, and scenario F, we think June 2021 is 95-5. That means that the only definition that was acceptable for sports was not acceptably safe, just safe, vaccination. And we're not going to be right. The Colorado 4th of July for us, the state opens for business on May 4th. We had a slight open out, and we also have a lodging. We arranged all of our lodging. So for those of you coaches that have made it, half the industry comes here every year. And so if you have 1,700 colleges, you can see the impact. But we moved the lodging world back to June 1 to time the decision. We had 280 coaches under contract to work the event at all levels. 450 others were registered with us. But we built a plan B. And so I want you to understand that Colorado 4th of July in Atlanta is possible. The Colorado 4th of July in Texas is possible. The Colorado 4th of July in California is possible. And the Colorado 4th of July in Colorado is possible. If the only way teams can come is drive, and drive is the only safe way to return based on any scenarios that happen to them, then regionalizing the event makes all the sense in the world. And so Plan B exists. We have most of the support from the top clubs in America to back this, that they would play in it in that format in their region and allow their drive radius coaches to support it. it mirrors what you're doing, and it mirrors what they're doing. Plan B would have the same 4th of July format, the same specialty events, maybe a shorter day window, but it would be under the same guideline. We could run Plan A only or Plan B only, and in all probability in Plan B, Plan A still exists, meaning Colorado exists, California exists, Texas exists, and somewhere in the Atlanta greater area. The decision will get made closer to June 1, and that fits where all of us are at. If anyone wants to force a decision right now in this midst of uncertainty, I would just tell you we are 40 days in, and in 30 days more, we're going to know a lot more. I tell the club teams, and I tell you the same as college coaches, print your schedule with Colorado 4th of July somewhere. On a championship level, we've reorganized everything to be drive radius. I've talked with Dan A., I've talked with Donnie at USSSA, I've talked with Craig at ASA. We've been on multiple calls together, first time that's ever happened, and we all believe that, and I wouldn't speak for all of them, but several of us believe the regionalization of championships has to be a strategy for us, where you can drive and so can the teams. And so look for those kind of options from other governing bodies like us. We have 7 championships in July, and they're spread throughout the United States to where it fits. Some of them are age-specific, but most allow us to put top talent in your region in front of you in some fashion. Our new player testing company, CSC, College Sports Eval, which my daughter, Elliot, myself are working on. We have some unique opportunities with it to test high school age athletes. We can run as small as 10-person events and fit the criteria. It starts in late June in 12 regions. We will hire 500 of you to work for us in different fashions to be evaluators or assessors on this business. It's not a scouting or a recruiting business, strictly a testing business. Many of these will be midweek to fit your schedule, whatever you've got to do. There'll be drive radius is all we'll hire. There won't be plane tickets. I would give you a recommendation before I show you the plan. This is one of my famous players that played for me that was born deaf. And she always had a plan, so I use her when I get to this. The disease will end. A coach is a person willing to work the problem to a plan. Optimism is the belief that the coach has a doable plan. I would say to each of you, build your plan and then lead your plan out. Now I'm going to show you an example of the sports facility that we have at our disposal, the diagram of scenario planning in this regard. And so this would be a social distancing success plan for any ballpark USA. Game 1's in progress. You can see it on the field. It shows the 2 teams, bases loaded situation with social distancing, a little extra gap for the umpire. The warm-up areas on the outside field, almost 20,000 square feet to use, ample social distancing. It shows an overlay of 2,500 square foot spaces in the infield that give a tremendous opportunity to warm up or start. It's more than enough room, and I'm going to reduce that to the ridiculous at the end so you can understand how much space that really is. And then it has a dugout and spectator area. In other words, what is going to happen? What would we liable to run this plan in? And then in this scenario, we would put a monitor at the gate to bring people in to make sure we followed our protocol. We'd shut down the playgrounds because we don't have protocols for them. The social distancing involved with restrooms would be cleaned by the facility monitors on a regular basis on health department rules. We'd have a roving director in charge of control points here and distancing. Viability of the concession stand would be strictly local. Our dugouts would be enlarged for greater player spacing. Plenty of room behind the backstops for spectators. And this is actual layout of what it could look like in large dugout area, meaning we would rope off or design areas where the players with lawn chairs could be spaced out and be able to come in and out of the dugout at this rate. A congregation area for post-game as people leave. And then spectator groupings, kind of in family groupings, 2 people spread in the backstop area and spread in the spectator area. You would be one of these spectator areas to view the players. The restroom and shelter areas, all restrooms would be cleaned and sanitized. Lines would be secured and monitored by our safety director on site. Restroom capacity would be set forth by the local health department. Picnic tables would either be removed or adjusted, and roving park director will monitor this all the time for us. So basically, we've added a person to our staff to monitor the gate. We've added a person to our staff to be a roving safety director, and we recommend this for everyone. If you look at the park entrance rules, which is one of the other transitions, not just from the dugout in, but actually in and out of the park, a line system that would be followed, strict in, strict out, sidewalk splits and timing with gathering, and our park monitor on the way in would handle that, and every entrance coming in. If the local entity required temperature monitoring, this is where we would apply it. We're basically providing this document for anyone to use, and I think it is in our best interest. We're talking to the clubs tomorrow, and then we have a player one at 2 o'clock for just the player stresses. We're recommending giving this out to any Parks and Rec. Right now, we're going to get blanket decisions, like you got as colleges, which is we're done until August 1. Just round it up, don't sort it out, don't figure it out, no class or types of people, no events at work. We believe our sports event is one of the necessary things in people's lives, and we think we have a great social distancing success plan to be able to play ball and to offer. Our outreach into the community is very important. The financial stress, the disease stress is real here. We have 5 employees with partners in their life that are in the healthcare, from doctors. I have 4 former nurses that came out of my team that are ICU, and their stories. My brother's frontline in charge of homeless in Los Angeles as a doctor. And so the implications everywhere. We've had 2 tests positive inside our system here, 5 family members. The impacts of the disease around us. But for us as a group, college coaches, club coaches, and players, to return into this space of normalcy, we have to take some leadership or beacon roles where we as ourselves are presenting solutions that are safe in order to play ball. Thank you, and I wish you the best. We'll put this on our website.